It's the late 16th century. Europe's powers are stretching their fingers across the vast, mysterious Atlantic, reaching for the New World's riches. Among these, a small English colony on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina, sought to lay roots in this new, uncharted land. These settlers, filled with hopes and dreams, arrive and begin to build their new life. But something mysterious happens. When supply ships return some years later, the island is deserted. The colony is gone without a trace, leaving behind a single cryptic clue: the word Croatoan carved into a tree. What happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? Join Historia Vault as we dive into this fascinating tale. Sir Walter Raleigh, an adventurous spirit and favoured member of the royal court, driven by grand ambitions and a desire to explore uncharted territories. He dreams of an English empire across the seas, a dream sanctioned by Queen Elizabeth herself. His eyes are fixed on the New World, a land that promises both untold wealth and a strategic foothold against Spanish dominance. Raleigh's initial attempts at colonization paved the way for what would become the ill-fated Roanoke venture. He sent a group of 115 English settlers, led by John White, to establish a colony on the island. Our story is preceded by earlier chapters, marked by courage and challenge. The very first English settlers made landfall on Roanoke Island in 1585, a year before the journey of our central characters. These initial explorers, led by Sir Richard Grenville, arrived with aspirations as high as the ocean was wide. But what they encountered was a land far removed from their expectations. America, lush and untamed, was a world apart from their English homes. The settlers faced an unforgiving environment, dense forests, unfamiliar wildlife, and a climate that tested their resolve. Their supplies, already limited, quickly proved inadequate for the demands of establishing a new settlement so far from home. But the land itself was not their only challenge. The colonists encountered native populations and cultures both rich and complex. These initial meetings were a mix of tentative trade, communication barriers, and increasingly, tension. Misunderstandings and fear on both sides led to skirmishes, eroding any hope of lasting peace and cooperation. As the weeks turned into months, the harsh realities of the New World began to take their toll. Food shortages, disease, and the strain of isolation weighed heavily on the settlers. Without significant support or reinforcement, their morale waned. The dream of a thriving English settlement on the coastal island began to crumble under the weight of the reality they faced. In less than a year, the situation reached a tipping point. Sir Francis Drake, arriving on an expedition, offered the beleaguered settlers a passage back to England. They accepted, leaving everything behind. Their departure, hastened by desperation, left an eerie quiet on the island, a silence that foreshadowed the mysterious fate of the colonizers who would follow. These initial attempts at colonization, marked by hardship and retreat, set a somber and foreboding stage for the next chapter of Roanoke's history. Little did the next group of settlers know, their story would be etched into history not for their triumphs, but for their mysterious and complete disappearance. 2 years later, John White and his settlers set foot on Roanoke Island, greeted by the remains of an earlier deserted fort. This sight didn't deter them. Instead, they got straight to work, fixing up the old structures and creating new ones. Life on the island was tough. The frontiersmen struggled with limited food. They had to quickly learn what crops could grow in this new land, and they were often short on supplies from back home. Health was another concern. They faced diseases they'd never seen before, with few remedies at their disposal. Building relationships with the native tribes was challenging too. There were misunderstandings and lingering tension from past encounters. But there were also moments of peaceful trade and communication. Through all these hardships, the settlers kept their hope alive. They were building something new here, a new life, a new community. They celebrated milestones like the birth of Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World. This little colony was more than just homes and crops. It was a symbol of their dreams. As the year 1587 drew to a close, John White faced a difficult decision. The colony, his daughter, Eleanor Dare, and his newborn granddaughter, Virginia, needed supplies and support from England. Reluctantly, White agreed to make the arduous journey back across the Atlantic, promising to return with much-needed aid. However, White's return to Roanoke was fraught with unforeseen delays. England was embroiled in a fierce conflict with Spain, culminating in the historic events of the Spanish Armada in 1588. These tumultuous times made crossing the Atlantic a dangerous endeavor, and resources were scarce. Ships that could have carried White back to the settlement were commandeered for war efforts, and his pleas for a swift return were lost amidst the chaos of national defense. It was 3 long years before White could finally make his way back to the Atlantic coast. His heart, heavy with anticipation and worry, must have raced as the shores of the island came into view. But what awaited him at Roanoke was not the bustling colony he had left behind, but an unsettling silence. The colony was deserted. The buildings that the settlers had so painstakingly constructed stood empty, some dismantled. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of a hasty departure. The only clue to their fate was a cryptic carving on a wooden post. The word, Croatoan. What had happened to the 115 people he left behind? To his daughter and granddaughter? Had they met with tragedy, or had they found a way to survive by leaving the island? The deserted colony stood as a haunting tableau, a mystery that begged to be solved but offered no easy answers. White's search for clues proved fruitless. Weather and circumstances thwarted his efforts to investigate further, particularly to explore Croatoan Island, now known as Hatteras Island, where he hoped to find some trace of the settlers. As White returned to England, heartbroken and without closure, the fate of the Roanoke colony remained shrouded in mystery. The settlers had vanished, leaving behind a riddle that would intrigue and baffle historians for centuries to come. This question has perplexed historians and scholars for centuries. Did they integrate with the local Croatoan tribe? Were they decimated by disease or starvation? Did they attempt to sail back to England and get lost at sea? Each theory has its proponents, but evidence remains elusive. In the quest to unveil the truth behind the Roanoke mystery, the 21st century has brought new tools and renewed fervor. Archaeologists, armed with modern technology, have delved into the soil of the island and its surroundings, sifting through the earth for clues that time has buried. Recent excavations have uncovered a range of intriguing artifacts: small pieces of European pottery, English-style homes built within native settlements, and even weaponry and personal items that belonged to the English colonists have been found miles from the original site of the colony. These discoveries paint a picture of a possible mingling of the English colonists with local native tribes, suggesting a scenario where the colonists might have been absorbed into these communities, adapting to their customs and way of life for survival. However, this hypothesis, like the fragments unearthed, provides only a partial view of the past. The tantalizing clues have not yet formed a complete picture. The primary question, what exactly happened to the settlers, remains unanswered. Despite advanced techniques like DNA analysis and ground-penetrating radar, no definitive evidence has emerged to solve the puzzle entirely. Moreover, the unearthed items also stir more questions than they answer. For example, were these items traded or taken? Were they signs of peaceful integration or desperate survival? The archaeological efforts, while enlightening, often lead to more complex interpretations of the events that transpired. The tale of Roanoke continues to be a tapestry of theories and speculations. Historians and archaeologists continue to debate and explore various avenues, from the possibility of mass migration in search of better resources to tragic ends at the hands of disease, famine, or conflict. Yet the absence of concrete evidence means the fate of the disappeared pioneers remains to this day an enigma of history. The story of Roanoke is a testament to human courage, and the unpredictable nature of exploration. It reminds us that our past is filled with unanswered questions and that some stories, no matter how deeply we dig, remain just out of reach, whispers lost in the winds of time. What do you think happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? Share your comments below and don't forget to subscribe to Historia Vault for more glimpses of the past. Until next time, keep seeking the stories that lie hidden in the shadows of history.